Please welcome Mary Stephen.
Yes.
And the moderator, filmmaker Sue Friedrich.
Okay, bonsoir, everybody. First, I'll do a little introduction. Born and raised in Hong Kong, Mary Stephen first learned about European cinema and the French New Wave through the pages of the Chinese Student Weekly, a popular cultural periodical of the 1950s and 60s. Stephen fell in love with the films of Truffaut and René and studied communication arts when she moved to Montreal, Canada. Upon graduation, she began to make and edit her own films before making the acquaintance of Éric Rohmer period. He invited Stephen to work as an assistant to his chief editor, Cécile Deguchy, renowned already as the editor of Godard's film Breathless. The Aviator's Wife was the first film in which Stephen worked as the assistant editor, and then she became Rohmer's regular editor and collaborator. From 1992 to 2010, she edited 10 of his films, including A Tale of Winter and The Lady and the Duke, up to and including his last film, The Romance of Astraea and Celadon. Stephen has also edited numerous award-winning narratives and documentaries from China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, Turkey, Canada, and South Africa, including Li Yang's Blind Mountain, Fan Li Jin's Last Train Home, Du Haibin's 1428, Seren Yusi's Majority, Hussein Karabey's My Marlin and Brando, Joan Chen's Shanghai Strangers, and Anne Hui's latest film, Love After Love. But those of you who just saw Mary's new film, Palimpsest, screened here this afternoon, or her recently restored first feature, Ombre de Soie, which was screened last night at the New York Film Festival, are aware that she is also a filmmaker. In the midst of being such a busy editor, it's hard to imagine how she finds the time to also make her own films, but I'm glad that she has pursued that other crucial part of her life in film. And I'm very glad to welcome her now to hear about her extensive and impressive career as both an editor and a filmmaker. Please give a warm welcome to Mary Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay,
that's that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
You didn't have a screen editor on The Aviator's Wife, despite the fact that you were the assistant editor. Why is that the case? And more broadly, how was your first experience working both with Rohmer and with Deguchy?
Well, now that it's so many years later and I'm not in France, I can tell the story. Simply because I didn't have the right to work at the time. I was a student in France when I met Rohmer, and after 2 years making my own films, I wanted desperately to stay in Paris. So he offered me to be his editor's assistant. And at that time, we could work as students, but so many hours a week kind of thing. But we couldn't really, go into it. So there was no credit on the thing, except that they figured a way. The production figured a way to pay me. They didn't exploit me kind of thing. They did pay me properly, but on a sort of maybe an author's contract or something like that, some sort of writing contract. And the thing is that, of course, that I said yes to the job because Cécile is that mythical editor that, Rohmer said, maybe you don't want to work as an assistant now that you've made already 2 films. And that's also my editor is very mean to her assistants, and they make all of her assistants cry. And so, but when I heard what she made, for us it was like, there's no way to refuse that, right? And Cécile became a very good friend. She really took me under her wings. She was very protective of me, and she became a filmmaker in her own right later on. She made a lot of short films, very interesting films, and then she passed away a few years ago, and we were still very good friends.
But maybe it was a little nerve-wracking at first to work with her because she's who she is? Or
No,
you
no.
just, you...
No, she was really very kind to me. Because at the time, the thing is that what is interesting is that we were working in film. This was shot in 16 millimeter. And so I was able to sit in the room to look at how she worked with Romain, which is something that I'd never done before. You know, when you're making your own film, you just edit your own film. And to see how two people, director, editor, work together, how they negotiate things, how then, you know, I mean, Cécile may then, after Romain leaves, tell me some sort of gossip things and things like that. I mean, that was important to me as a first collective work experience, yeah.
So you edited 10 films with Romer. Do you have a favorite Romer film that you edited, a least favorite? And I don't mean which film made you laugh or cry. I mean, what in your editing experience was the most interesting to work with, if there was one in particular, and why?
I would say that, I mean, the 10 features, or because there was also a series of short films, maybe 10 features.
Okay, she edited 50 films for Romer.
I don't know. I lost track.
Right.
And because he also released a whole bunch of shorts as a feature-length thing. And I think that the most interesting in terms of editing would be Autumn's Tale. Because at a certain time, because he was working with mature women, first of all, because he was always working with the same actors, actresses, and that he would follow their progress. Like, you know, they would grow up and grow older in his films. And by the time Autumn's Tale came along, they were middle-aged women. And I had a little bit more leeway to get into, because there's always this reverse shots that he likes to do of conversations, and he liked to concentrate on the person who listens. So there was more composition in terms of when you cut to the person listening or when you cut to the person talking. That kind of composition was more, there was much more to do. Mm-hmm. But what is more interesting in Autumn's Tale is that at the end, because it's all a story of this middle-aged woman, happily married, trying to find a lover, a match or a partner for her best friend who's a widow. And what was interesting is that at the end of the film, that the happily married woman sent off her friend with the match, that all throughout the film she had pretended to be her friend. That at the end there's sort of this happy marriage scene, wedding scene of this happily married woman with the daughter dancing, and that I had the opportunity to find footage in the dance that actually said something else, like that the look, the last look of the woman looked up like in her husband's arms, you know, in this dance, and she looked completely lost. She looked like she, obviously this whole experience had made her think or long for something else. And that sort of gave it a whole different meaning or a different layer. And it sort of made me think a lot about directors' self-censorship, that they don't, they have things to say that they don't dare to come out and say it. And often, I'm sure that you have the same experience, that we become that voice for the director, that excuse for the director, that what they don't dare to express, they sort of put it on us, that sort of thing. We do it for them, kind of thing.
And also, I mean, I made this website, people got cards for it, and I read about all these different editors, how they worked with directors. And so in the case of him, were you putting something together and then he'd come in and look at it, or were you sitting together? or with Cecile even doing this film, was he there all the time, or was it like, okay, what do you think now? What do you think now? So how did the flow go?
Yeah, I mean, with him, it was all the time. It was like he wouldn't let me look at the rushes before him, before he finished, and he would be like looking at rushes a lot during the shooting, and then I would come in to look at the rushes with him in his office, and then we would go over, what shots are best and so on. But then when we get into the editing room, he insists to be there. He's like supervising every cut kind of thing. But it's sort of like, but then it was important that we really had the same idea of rhythm, as we would be always like agreeing on which place to cut, kind of thing, except once or twice. And then, but his thing of sitting there is, it's quite often, well, maybe it's a way to not lose control or not lose the thread of what he had created. Even though it was a trust relationship, like he really trusted me. And the editing room was sacred, so nobody else could come in. No actors, no producers, nobody. And that during that time, only the two of us would go out to buy some ham and cheese and come back and eat and stuff. And he would sleep. He would nap in the morning, he would nap in the afternoon. So in fact, there was like a big chunks of time that he just let me do things. But then, of course, at that time, nobody knew about it. Everybody just knew that he was there all the time.
Right.
The thing is that after him, except for Romain, I couldn't stand that of anybody else. That's my way of working is always that I would say ahead of time that I do not want the director in the room, and that I would discuss the film thoroughly with them, their intentions and so on, and figure out what their self-censorship thing is. But I wouldn't be sitting with them. I mean, there are different ways of working, so they can find somebody who can sit with them. Except for Anne Hui, who's an older director in Hong Kong, but even her, she figured out that that's how I need to work, being alone with the material. So she would actually let me do a chunk of film, and then she would come in and sit with me. We would look at the thing together, and we would revise immediately. But with Romain, it was constant.
Wow.
Yeah.
The actress, Mary Stephen, you appear in The Aviator's Wife in the scene in the park. You were also one of the two main characters in your early film, Ombre de Soie. Were you in any other cameo roles in a Romer film, or did you act in any other films of yours or by other directors? And how do you feel about being in front of the camera instead of behind it as a filmmaker or an editor?
Wow, that's a trick question. Because of this, like all these short films, my past films being restored, I just realized that people had been pointing out to me that I'm constantly in my own films that I never realized. For Ombre de Soie, it was simply like I was explaining in the Q&A that it was simply that we couldn't find anybody else. It's at that time there were very few Asians in Paris. For this, of course, there's a lovely theory behind this because I think that there's a thing about Romain. He wanted to capture all of us, those of us that are around him, this moment of youth, that when we were the most beautiful, whatever it is, the most innocent, the most whatever it is, that quality. And it was almost like a gift. Every one of us had this cameo or one film, like when it's like professional actors, he actually devoted a film to each one of these young actresses. And somehow when I look back, it's really a gift. It's like at the moment that he captured and that he gave to us. And for the other films, like I realized that, you know, that the short film Labyrinth, when I made in film school, I was running down the corridor, and, because again, we couldn't find anybody else. In my latest film, of course, I'm in it a lot because I'm searching for my own thing, so I have to be in it. I think somehow, you know, we all hate seeing ourselves and hate hearing our own voices, but I think that I finally come to a place where I can just ignore it. Yes.
That's good. Okay, so one of the things I learned while making the Edited by website was that Mary is extremely unusual. She's almost unique as someone who edits both documentary and narrative films, because this was the website is a lot about professional editors, and they're just like, they do narrative or they do documentary, and Mary does both, which is amazing. So can you talk about the difference between those genres, or if there is a difference when you're editing, or does working on a documentary affect the way you edit narrative, or vice versa?
Yes, definitely there are different, and I would say that it took me a long time. I got into documentaries by accident, actually. I was trained on experimental films. I mean, I was trained. When we were going to school, we were looking at a lot of experimental films. But then I got into the whole math thing, which is strictly narrative. And it took me a long time. I mean, I never thought about documentaries. And it was a very closed world. I don't know whether it still is. It was like I was feeling pretty not offended, but sort of pretty hurt a couple of times when I was kind of made to understand that we, the narrative film editors, don't know what to do with documentaries, which, you know, I do think that they are very different, but still storytelling is storytelling. And it's because that somebody at one point in France were looking for a Chinese-speaking editor for a documentary film from China that they were co-producing, that I got to make this jump. And the first experience was disastrous. It was like I had a very bad experience with this Chinese director, and then I met Du Haibing with whom, and because of this very bad experience, I said to Du Haibing, this very well-known documentary director from China, that I would edit his film, but he was forbidden to come into the editing room. And he made a sort of a trick. I needed some more tapes, I needed some more rushes, and one day he just came in carrying those tapes. And then he said to me, "You're afraid that I would that I would stay?" And I said, "Yes, go away." And then from then on, we became the best of friends. Still, he doesn't come in the editing room. But from then on, from Du Haibing's films, I started to be in the documentary world. And because he is still a very innovative documentary filmmaker, that he's more experimental than narrative, I was happy because I was able to use, because I wasn't trained in documentary editing, so I was editing it like whatever I felt like, like it was like sort of an experimental exercise, and that was fine. And after that, like it just kept coming, different things. I mean, at one point, Last Train Home was a reference of documentaries, especially Chinese documentaries, and after Last Train Home, everybody wanted another Last Train Home.
I would say if anybody can access Last Train Home, which I know is on Canopy.
Yeah, I think it's on a streaming thing.
It's unbelievable. It's really incredible as a documentary because of how informed it is by your understanding of narrative. So
yes.
Highly recommended. There's a question here. We have 5 more minutes. Okay.
Okay.
So I could ask another question, or I could see if the audience has a question. Anybody in the audience have a question? Yes, right here. Okay, that was easy.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your time. I wanted to ask, so I'm a media student, and in classes we're constantly told like people's attention spans are so short, and that you only have 3 seconds or so for an edit. And I was wondering, in your career, if you've seen that happen, if you've seen that you've changed or you've had some effect on the way that you edit because of things like attention spans, or are you only really thinking of narrative, or is it even is it instinctual for you? Are you making your decisions because you know something is good and that's what you go for, or is it balancing things like narrative, things like engagement and audience and so on?
I think that every material has its own rhythm and it has its own way. The material asks you, tells you how to cut it, actually. And I think that somebody had said, I remember some conversation, like a thing that I saw on a website of a editing group, and that an editor said, speed is essential to editing. I thought, what? What kind of bullshit is that? I mean, I'm all for it. Also, taking the time to edit, and that each shot has its own rhythm, and there's certain things that have to be long. Don't listen to whatever. I mean, now you'll never get a job. Yeah.
How often do you find yourself, or I guess, where the scenes end, is that in the script, or is that something you figure out as you're editing?
The scripts are very, very precise. The conversations, the lines, they are very precise. And Romain almost, once he has finished rehearsing with an actor, because he does a lot of rewriting to fit the actor's natural way of speaking. But once the script is finalized, he almost doesn't change a comma, except for a Summer's Tale where we cut out a part of a scene. But he had to be the one to do it. So when the script is finished, it's finished. But then the whole editing process is how you finish it. Yeah. The rhythm of the cut, yes.
Okay. Well, okay, we're out of time. Thank you all for your attention, and thank you, Mary, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.